आँखों में मस्ती शराब की, काली जुल्फों में रातें शबाब की, जाने आई कहाँ से टूट के, मेरे दामन में पंखड़ी गुलाब की। हाय आँखों में मस्ती शराब की, काली जुल्फों में रातें शबाब की, जाने आई कहाँ से टूट के, मेरे दामन में पंखड़ी गुलाब की। हाय आँखों में मस्ती शराब की। चांद का टुकड़ा कहूँ या हुस्न की दुनिया कहूँ, चांद का टुकड़ा कहूँ या हुस्न की दुनिया कहूँ, प्रीत की सरगम कहूँ या प्यार का सपना कहूँ, सोचता हूँ क्या कहूँ, सोचता हूँ क्या कहूँ, इस शोख को मैं क्या कहूँ। आँखों में मस्ती शराब की, काली जुल्फों में रातें शबाब की, जाने आई कहाँ से टूट के, मेरे दामन में पंखड़ी गुलाब की। हाय आँखों में मस्ती शराब की।
Love this two-way, three-way conversations to continue.
Yeah. All of us can just chip in and chat.
It's like a mehfil. You know, the essence of Talat Mahmood's music was ghazals and mehfil, so this is also like a mehfil. And we should continue in the spirit of that.
Yeah.
This is my book, which is Talat Mahmood, the definitive biography. It's an e-book right now because it's a very voluminous edition. And
very insightful as well.
Insightful, yeah. And I'm very fortunate to have the prestigious Dhruvival Gallery give me the space to discuss his legacy. Adding to that is Naved. Naved Anjum is the features editor of the Federal News. It's a very popular news portal, and it gives a 360-degree view on things that are happening across the world, across the country. He's very discerning about culture and books. And I'm really glad he's agreed to come today to talk about my book here.
Thank you, Sahar. I think you were generous in here. But thank you so much for having me over here. I am somebody who has admired her work, what she has been doing, Sahar, for many years now. This book, of course, sprang from her, this festival I think most of you are aware of. It is called Jashn-e Talat. And that was something that you sort of conceived and sort of took to many cities in India.
Right. It was a tribute concert platform of music and dance and visual arts, all dedicated to the music and films of Talat Mahmood.
Right.
And while digging and rediscovering his journey, I realized that not all of it can fit into a concert, so it needs a book.
So that is also, I think, that became the the starting point for the book. The book actually runs into nearly 500 odd pages, and I was reading the PDF, and there are these small interesting anecdotes that she has woven in, and add to that the bonuses, the digitized photographs that you have from the personal family
pictures
collection.
From my family album and very old photographs from the 1940s and 50s that I've kind of cleaned up and digitized and made it printable for the digital platform.
Right. So to begin with, Sahar, I think let us talk a little bit about the years that the biography has stayed with you. The kind of and of course it's always a labor of love like this always entails a lot of toil and blood. So if you could take us to those years of research and gathering this little bit information from everywhere, because considering his legacy actually spans many cities, many sort of Kolkata, Bombay.
When I decided to write the book, that was barely 2 years ago, so it's taken 2 years of research and writing. I think I worked in the speed of a television news journalist only, where we are so used to 5-second deadlines. So I think if we put that in perspective, maybe I wrote this book in 5 seconds. that concept of a deadline, where my speed was very fast. But if it's come in as in depth as you say, so I'm really glad about that. Yes, it was about revisiting his journey, putting myself in his shoes, understanding him, and knowing where he went, in which part of his life, in which time of his life, and finding a lot of new colleagues, which adds a very exclusive insight to the film. And I was fortunate that they're still around, because his colleagues, उनके जो हम उम्र लोग हैं, they are 90 years old, and they're still so sharp, and they have such a great memory, and they're still so agile and active. So I was very fortunate that I found them, and they could still talk about their association with Talat Nana. This included members of his orchestra, his concert manager, because he was the first Indian playback singer to start world concerts in the peak of his career way back in 1956, where no one was doing global concerts. So his concert manager is still around, and he gave me such incredible insights when they were traveling to East Africa and Trinidad, and really setting the concert trail in the United States for other singers, because his colleagues Lata Didi and Mukesh ji would look at him doing these global concerts and think that, okay, if Talat has sold tickets and had these blockbuster concerts, maybe we can also look. So he was literally setting the route for them. And then doing that UK tour as well, and being the first singer to perform in that legendary Pebble Mill studio of the BBC. And at the Royal Albert Hall. That's a very fresh aspect to his career that I've added to this book, which is
we'll talk all about that, but just beginning from the beginning, and that's why I thought perhaps taking you back to those years when actually the book took shape. And it's here, if you could tell us a little bit about Jashan-e-Talat and the kind of curation that happened, and it was very personal, it was very intimate, because you were doing it not just as an admirer, as a journalist, as an admirer, but also as his grandniece, right? And who had access to a lot of,
I mean, you're talking about
Jashan-e-Talat.
About Jashan-e-Talat, the concert. So the concert was the seed of the book, and it made me realize that it's not just about songs and music and films and this very glamorous factor to Bollywood, as we say. While doing Jashan-e-Talat, I realized it's a remarkable journey that needs to be written about, because he's been like a trailblazer. He's been pioneering in many aspects, which needs to be put into better perspective in the form of the book. And that's how the research got deeper,
Also, one of the things that actually strikes you is, and you also mentioned in somewhere in the beginning only, that the rigor that it entails for a journalist to dig deep into a story, and a story as richly lived as Talat Mahmood Sahab's, and your own sort of approach as a relative, and somewhere you had to cede ground and let the journalist take over. So those moments, if you could talk about, and from different stages of his career, and
so it's like a tightrope walk of what should be mentioned and what shouldn't be mentioned. But I think I've been more true to being a journalist in this book. Maybe some of my family members won't be happy reading some of it, because because when you're a trailblazer, you're always taking a very strong stand in favor of what you want to do in life. You want to do music at a time when it's not accepted in traditional cultural households. You want to get married to a spouse of your choice, which is outside the circle of your own Lucknow Muslim cultural household. So and those were things that were not very comfortably spoken about all the time in the family. So I had to call up family all the time, members of my extended family, my mom included, to tell me what is it that you know, and leave it to me to put across things. And I had to be honest to myself as a journalist as well. I didn't want to put across a piece, this voluminous book, which is not true to reality.
Right.
It had to be true to reality. It had to be the truth on what has happened in his entire journey, and not wash over things. If there's been a struggle, if there's been a friction, if there's been an argument, if there's been happiness and success, all of it is there as how it really happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then of course you talk about how you began, and then you take us directly to his childhood years in Lucknow and how he grew up, and those were also crucial years in the way that you know the osmosis that happened, that the kind of various. I mean, Lucknow is a culturally rich and vibrant city, but the kind of household that he grew into also, and it's here that we should also understand the role of his Phupi, that's the the sister of his father, and Mahlaka Begum, right? And how she sort of how she was the one who lent him support and sort of nurtured him, even though his own father was sort of against him to for him to take up pursue a career in music or acting for him.
So this is 1924, just to put you in perspective in what time and what era that we're talking about. 1924 is pre-independence. It's British India, and he was born in Lucknow into a family which was very culturally active. There was a lot of music and poetry, Urdu poetry, as we say, mausiqui or mushaira or mehfil or jo behtak hoti thi ghar ke andar, calling the top performers of that time home to perform in the courtyard, in the mehfil. So that was the family atmosphere. Very closely associated to the arts, but a line was drawn that you can understand the arts, appreciate the arts, but not be involved in the arts to be commercially earning from it. That was frowned upon. आप उसको appreciate करिए, आप enjoy करिए, आप top artists से बात करिए, उनको बुलाइए, but you don't enter that profession and earn from it commercially. That was where the line was drawn, and that was the difference to what Talat felt very passionately about, to get into it professionally, and what his father felt was not right. And the person who was the bridge between the two was Talat's maternal aunt, who was the father's sister, who was this phenomenal liberal trailblazing woman of her times in the 1920s, who was without the burqa, who would openly talk about and speak and write in Urdu and organize music conferences and talk about women's liberation in those days, which was unthinkable. She recognized the boy who had a mind of a sensitive artist and who had a soft voice and who had to be nurtured. So she continuously supported him and continuously persuaded Talat Nana's father that let him pursue this, he's special. Right. In that sense.
And I think he sort of established himself, as a singer. Right. Pretty early in life, I think when he was still 16. In college. 16, that's
16 was his first recording when he was a teenager.
And also this piece of advice that K.L. Sagal had given him, and that actually kept him in good stead in some sense.
Yes.
Because when he met him, and I think you mentioned that, that he said that no, you first complete your education and then only you come to, because in those initial years he was also imitating his voice. He was trying to sort of sing in his voice, right?
Yes.
And then, he finds his own voice, and when he lands in Kolkata, we'll talk about that years. But just about that bit about his association, before he moved to Kolkata, he actually had a sense of what was happening, right, in the music and how he could take it forward as a singer.
The first step towards professional music was to study music professionally. So the father's condition was that you have to complete your education. So when he finished his school and it was time to get into college, he said, so I'll get into a music college. And it was right across the street there in Aminabad in Lucknow, which is the Bhatkande Music College these days in Lucknow. In those days it was called the Maris Music College. That was the first stepping stone and this mini success in persuading the father yet again. And in Bhatkande, recording labels would come in campus and hunt young talent. And Talat was a huge star as a student because he was already recording in the All India Radio. The All India Radio had just started in Lucknow. They had just started their service in the 1930s. So he would visit their studios and, get his voice attuned to the microphone and the instruments and understand what a recording setup is. So when he was picked by HMV, the HMV team was visiting from Calcutta, because in those days during British India, Calcutta was where the industry was, where the
Yeah,
showbiz industry
yeah.
was. It was the commercial capital for the British,
Absolutely.
and that is where the showbiz industry
Also the
was. as
studios
well.
and also,
the studios,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
The famous Dum Dum studio,
Dum Dum studio
in
where we-
Calcutta,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
which is where the first ever recording of ever took place. Gohar Jan's first recording
Yeah,
took place.
yeah.
Rabindranath Tagore, Pandit Nehru, they recorded their political speeches there. So that is where Talat Nana also recorded his first song. And that was Sab Dil Ek Saman Nahi Tha. This is
Yeah.
when he was in college and he was 16 years old.
Yeah,
And,
and then that leads to this the HMV thing, which he got at 3 songs deal with at 30 rupees at that point of time.
Yes,
which
yes,
is a
that
big
was,
deal.
that was part of it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that's when he was spotted by Pankaj Malik.
Right.
Yeah.
And that became very, very crucial
Yes.
to his years in Kolkata, and the kind of that also was a stepping stone in some sense.
Yeah.
That his years later in Bombay, that
Right.
how they would shape up.
Pankaj Malik was one of the co-owners of New Theatres.
Right.
So New Theatres was a very big production label for making films and recording music in Calcutta. And Pankaj Malik spotted him and said that I want you to record more songs. I want you to sign up a film here as well. But Talat was very scared. He had to complete his education and not annoy his father. So he went rushing back to Lucknow to complete his college. And then 3 years later,
He comes back again.
go back to Calcutta and tell Pankaj Malik, now I'm here to do all the recordings that you want me to do. So now I'm available. I've completed my education. Yeah.
Right. Now, before he moves to Bombay, that's
The Calcutta years.
The Calcutta years. If you
Yeah.
talk about the very interesting ones also, in
Yeah.
some sense, because then he, of course, sings as a Bengali singer under the name
Yes,
of
Tapan Kumar.
Tapan Kumar, and everybody
Yeah.
thinks that Tapan Kumar is a different singer than
Yeah.
and not Talat Mahmood, right?
Right.
You could talk about that. I mean, a lot of people still think that Talat was.
Yes, I
yeah.
know. Calcutta was very fascinating because he shifted from the city of with Awadhi culture and which was very different, and Calcutta was this mighty commercial capital with broader roads and taller buildings and stronger structures, and really the might of the British Empire, and the buildings spoke out to you,
The
saying
grandeur
that this is the power capital. So it was fascinating. It was a very different culture, but he had to take it all in. It was very fascinating to be in Calcutta, and most importantly that he finally found his ground as a singer there.
Right.
So when he recorded his first hit, Tasveer Teri, Dil Mera, Behla Na
Behla Na
Sakegi.
Sakegi, yeah.
So that was such a huge hit that Pankaj Malik said that now you sing in Bengali. And that was an unexpected challenge thrown up on him, because here he was perfecting his Urdu and understanding of Urdu poetry so that he sings his ghazals perfectly. And now he was asked to learn a new language that he knew nothing about. But when he sang in Bengali in the name of Nom de Plume, in the name of Tapan Kumar,
Tapan Kumar.
there are so many people till very late, till my colleagues in my newsroom in the mid-2000s.
Yeah. You mentioned that anecdote in which...
Yes, one of my show producers.
Yeah.
They were so convinced that Tapan Kumar was a Bengali boy, and they couldn't imagine that someone from outside could sing Bengali in that manner.
Yeah. So then this is very important, because after Kolkata he goes to Bombay, and then we were talking about the fact that he does not arrive in Bombay, unlike many people who actually landed in Bombay as a struggler, those harrowing stories of people landing in, at the railway station, sleeping there.
Sleeping on the road.
Sleeping on the road. It was nothing in his case, but he doesn't arrive as somebody who is unknown. He had, sung songs in Bangla, and he had carved his identity. So if you could talk about that did that really sort of help him, I mean, his later association with Dilip Kumar or Devanand and many other actors and actresses of the time.
1948-49, so it was just very close to after independence, 1948-49.
But before that, sir, if you could just talk about the partition thing, because I think that's also a very crucial thing. His brother moved after the partition to Pakistan.
Yeah, those were very stressful times, and each time when I was in these time zones, I had to really, in my head, position myself at that time, imagine what the city looked like, imagine what the people were like, imagine what the atmosphere was. It was this freedom struggle fervor and this fight for independence, and they were also very stressful time for artists because so many of them were wondering what to do, whether to go to East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, or to go to Pakistan side, or to stay back in India. There was so much chaos. It's really unimaginable. I mean, as much as you think what was the position and the mental position of people to take those decisions at that time. Talat Nana and his father, of course, decided to stay back in India because his brothers were positioned in geographically in that side of what was to become the border. They stayed back thinking that they'll stay back, and after independence they'll keep coming in and visiting. It's going to be like an open border. It's not going to be so stringent as it is. So there were decisions under those circumstances that were taken, but it was also a question of families being separated. And there's an incident I also mentioned in the book that he had gone to see off one of his family members at the Bombay port because they were sailing to Karachi. And some people spotted Talat on the boat and they said, "Oh my God, is he going to leave India and go? Just immediately catch a hold of him and don't let him go. He needs to stay back here." So that was the kind of love that people had for him. And that was the decision that he made as well. And in a very conscious, secular manner that one has to stay back in India.
Right. So in Bombay, the fact that, of course, this identity that he had already carved, the fact that he was a combination of amazing voice, the texture of his voice was completely different, velvety, as you say. It was a voice that could not be copied. Nobody could sing like Talat.
Today.
Right. And then his looks, his charming sort of persona in that sense, that he was, a debonair in the true sense of the word, like Devanand, and who in his tuxedo would be, so sort of, So if you could give us a sense of how did that actually work in his favor? That he had a voice that was different, but also he was charming, and drawing influence from the Western music, and you could talk about those his inclusion of in ghazals. Guitars and violin. He was a pioneer of ghazal singing in that sense.
So this is the 1950s. So the early 1950s, he was literally the top singer in the film industry. Much before these partnerships worked out, that Mohammad Rafi Saab would only sing for a certain actor, or Raj Kapoor preferred Mukesh. That happened later in the late 60s. But in the early 50s, because he was the most wanted voice, he was singing for all the actors. He was playbacking. He did playback. Of course, he was Dilip Kumar's voice in his Tragedy King phase. His Tragedy King phase is incomplete without Talat Mahmood's voice. So he sang for Dilip Kumar. He sang for Raj Kapoor, Devanand, Sunil Dutt, Manoj Kumar, all the top actors. But what the producers realized was that as a playback singer, someone who stays behind the scene, who's not in front of the camera, Talat curiously had a very huge female following. And the other playback singers didn't have that. And the reason was that because he was so charming and handsome. And he wasn't interested in acting at all. Some of the film producers pushed him, saying that, you're very bankable face in that sense, so let's use your face, So he got into it very reluctantly. That really wasn't his focus was always singing. And so that's how his debut in Bombay happened, even though he'd acted in a few films in Calcutta. But the Bombay debut happened with the film Dil e Nadan in 1953. In 1953. And there was a huge contest. There was a nationwide contest that was announced in the newspapers. Who wants to be Talat Mahmood's first co-star? So it was like a Miss India contest that you apply for it in the newspapers. So girls were shortlisted, and then it was finally Shama, the actress Shama, and Peace Kaval. So they were shortlisted in this contest to be his co-star for Dil e Nadan. And then as his singing career progressed, his acting career, which not many know about because there were just about 13 to 15 films that he did, but he was a co-star with the top heroines of the time. He was with Mala Sinha, he was romancing Nutan and Shama, and Suraya as well. In fact, the one with Suraya, he has a film with Suraya which is called Varis. That was a Silver Jubilee hit. And with Nutan, the film was called Soni Ki Chidiya, which was with him, with Talat Mahmood, Nutan and Balraj Sani. It was a love triangle. And surprisingly, Talat Mahmood was given a negative role. I think the director was trying to experiment that can we have Talat Mahmood's, soft chocolate boy looks do a negative role. And a lot of critics, I read newspaper clippings, which was part of my research, that he managed to pull off that role. So even as an actor, he was growing. But he didn't continue with it. He just took it up so reluctantly. And in the flow of things, he kept doing one film after another. But eventually he put his foot down and said that I'm just going to be focusing with singing now, so yeah.
Right. Now we move to those Bombay years, of course, and then his of course career as a playback singer, both filmy and non-filmy. Then his immense contribution to the cause of playback singers' rights, because the royalty thing, and that was a huge issue then, because a lot of singers would not be actually getting their due. If you could talk a little bit about that, because he became a secretary at some point. No?
Yes, and this was Talat the activist, which one has not heard of, or one would not expect a gentle soul like Talat to be fighting for rights as well.
Yes. There's a chapter dedicated to the whole thing.
Yes. And so this was during the early 1960s. He was heading the Playback Singers Association. And Lata Didi had spoken about this about 2 years ago. And but no one in the industry was speaking about it as a collective force. So Talat decided to raise this cause when he was the secretary of the Playback Singers Association, and he gathered his friends. Lata Didi was there, Mukesh ji were there, and then the others collected around as well. And they did the first ever mic down protest. Like you have a pen down protest. So they did the mic down protest. So the first time in the film industry, the recording studios were shut for 3 months. No singer in protest recorded a single song for 3 months. And I think that was the first big major step towards this whole journey of your royalty for the singers, what is known as the royalty battle for the singers. So, and more recently in the past decade or in the past 8 years, when this has finally come through for the singers, very few people know that he was one of the first to raise this as a major step, So
later, I think this fight would also be fought by others, like this whole idea of not giving credit to lyricists. That was also another issue, which I think Javed Akhtar was also at the forefront of it all. So then we go back to where we were in Bombay, and those years, of course, I assume they would have entailed a lot of work, in the sense that you would have to zero in on the people who worked with him in that sense, and then revisit those times.
Well, not too many of them are around. His closest, one of his closest friends, Dilip Kumar, of course, was not around. But I spoke to his wife, Saira Bano.
Okay.
She spoke a bit about it, whatever little she knew, and but they had been spoken about Talat earlier as well. So I had to revisit a lot of archival interviews. A lot of them were part of my own personal archive, because whenever a show would come on Talat Nana on the news or on the other entertainment channels, I could record it on my VCR tapes, and my VCR tapes and my mom's newspaper clippings became part of my personal archive as well, which was part of the research for the book, of revisiting what other people have spoken about him, what he's spoken himself in interviews to magazines. So that has been re-looked in as well. So in that way, if you read the book, I don't think there's a voice missing. It's collectively moving along with what his colleagues were saying, what his friends were saying, as the journey is moving ahead. What Dilip Kumar said about his voice, what Mala Sinha felt about him as a co-star, as a friend, as an actor, what music composer Khayyam Saab had to say about Shamir Gham Ki Qasam, what was Devanand's story behind when he was sitting on the Juhu beach and singing Jaye To Jaye Kahan, what was the personal story going behind the scenes of him getting married to Kalpana Karthik, and how Talat was lip-syncing that song. And very, very interesting incident of the premiere night of the film, Taxi Driver with Devanand, where Talat and Devanand walked down the red carpet, and there was for the screening of the premiere of the film, and there was such a huge mob that they couldn't get out, and Devanand just held his hand and said, "Talat, yahan se niklo, ab hame nikalna padega." And they just escaped from the back gate, you know,
Right.
so the fire exit, I think.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of these very interesting anecdotes which have been revisited and really put together for the first time.
Right,
As,
right.
Yeah.
One thing that we missed, I think, in the Kolkata years was, you know, how crucial it was for a lot of other things, but also where he fell in love.
Yes, yes.
So if we could talk about, and then we'll come back to that.
So yes, Calcutta was of course finding his commercial success and finding his first love. His life partner.
Yeah.
And what happened at home about it. So this was another very uncomfortable conversation I had to all the time have with my family.
Right.
And really dig out things and write a lot of things that are now in the public domain which were not. So.
Right. And that's what makes it unique in that sense.
For that you'll have to read the book on how it happened in Calcutta. It was a Calcutta romance and how he had to leave and then establish himself in Bombay. And they had to have a long distance relationship for at least for a year.
Yeah.
To be settled in Bombay, and then and she was also she was an actor in New Theatres. That's where they met in the studio, and with P.C. Barua, who was a huge filmmaker.
Yeah.
And that's how it progressed, and then it eventually settled. Family around got used to it because this was also getting married outside the Lucknow
back then,
family circle that the family accepted absolutely in embracing in a very embracing manner, and it took a while. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are interesting, and I think some of the his early years as a college student also, the kind of influence that he had over girls, and there is this incident she has mentioned that a bunch of girls. So he was going to college, and a bunch of girls chased him and asking him to sing a song on the road.
On the road, yeah.
And one of them is Quratul Haider.
Yeah. So and one of the girls was. Quratul Haider, who was a very famous
Urdu fiction writer.
Urdu writer. And all of them stopped him on the road, and he had to sing a couple of songs there and then, holding his cycle and getting late for college. And by the time he reached college, his professor had already called home and complained to his dad that he's bunking class today. So he had to pay a price for that.
Right. Now, Sahar, let's talk a little bit about, he was pioneer in so many ways, of course, as a ghazal singer, because that was a concept not known then. And he inspired, of course, a whole generation of ghazal singers later. We had Jagjit Singh, we had Mehdi Hasan, who became his admirer, and I think you
almost
also write
like
about
disciple.
When he almost like a disciple, and when he goes actually meets him in Pakistan, right? I think one chapter is dedicated to his Pakistan visit as well.
One chapter is only about Mehdi Hasan and how he was influenced by him.
Right.
Yeah.
So also, if you could talk a little bit about his, because now it's pretty common that singers and stars would have concerts abroad, but back then it was a little difficult in the sense that you had this whole apparatus taking, and what would that entail and all that. Times Square, and I think other places that US and UK Royal Albert Hall. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, he started, he was the first Indian playback singer from the film industry to start world concerts, world tours. No one else was doing it. And the first that he did was in the peak of his career, which was in 1956. And when they went to East Africa, and East Africa was a bunch of countries together. It was still under British India. There was Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and Kenya. So it was the East Africa tour which he took for at least 3-4 weeks, in which he had to stop his music recording, he had to stop his film recording, shoot recording, and dedicate that much time abroad for the concert tour. But it was a huge success, and I was really fortunate that I got in touch with his concert manager, who was his concert manager, and he's in Mumbai these days, and he's 91 years old. But his memory is so sharp, and he was just so happy someone called him to ask about his first concert and talk about those old days. And he gave me such exclusive insights that even my family never knew. We were also hearing it for the first time. So that's really an exclusive part of the book, on how the whole the concert tour was organized, on how it was managed, and how Talat was supportive about this whole idea of doing it and leaving behind recording, stopping recording and going ahead for 1 month, because not being available for recording for 1 month is quite a risk that you take.
Right.
But he did that, and eventually it was a success. It was a multi-nation tour in East Africa, and he talks of this incident where they were traveling by train from one city to towards Dar es Salaam. The train was stopped midway in another city.
Okay.
It was stopped by the local people there, and they went into his cabin and they complained that you're doing so many multi-cities performances, why aren't you performing for us, and we won't allow the train to move ahead till you perform for us. So he had to agree, and he said, okay, I'll do it for free, it's not listed on our itinerary, I'll still do it because you've shown me so much love. And they didn't even have an auditorium in that city. It was like a tiny village. They had a hall, and people brought in chairs from their homes and set up the whole hall and cleaned up the place and made it concert ready for him. so that he performs. And then they sent in their own cars to the next city so that he doesn't get late for the next performance. So lovely
Wonderful,
incidents, yeah. And even the one
Very
that is
interesting.
in Trinidad, the performance that he does in Trinidad was at a time when the Beatles were visiting India.
Yeah.
So when you had Beatlemania in India, when the Beatles were visiting the ashram here in India in
Right,
1968,
yeah.
I say that there was Talat Mania in another part of the world, because in 1968 he went to Trinidad, and there when he had the performances, there was so much mass hysteria that the police had to call in the horses, their mount police on horses, because they couldn't control the crowd. And the choppers had to call in to, divert the crowd, because Talat couldn't enter the auditorium to perform. So these tiny little details were pretty fascinating for me to hear for the first time from his concert manager.
Great. Yeah,
And looking at him, because these concerts were such a success, then his friends Lata Mangeshkar, Mukesh ji, Mohammad Rafi, they started their world tours looking at him. So he was like really setting a map for them.
Map for them in that sense. Also, another aspect about his, we of course talk about, if you want to have a coffee, you can take a sip,
Sure,
and then we can. So, we were just discussing, in fact, before we began, that of course when he sang in Urdu, he sang in chaste language, getting the diction right, getting the nuances right, getting the cultural kind of whole context right, in that sense, in its delivery, that is. Bangla again was something he had mastered within a very short span of time when he was asked to. Then he sang in Telugu, he sang in Malayalam. How many languages did he sing in?
16 languages. 16
languages. I think that's mind-boggling. It's unthinkable, for a singer of that time.
And each time he sang in a different language, one thought that he was a native speaker.
Right.
And that's what his colleague P. Sushila, who's known as the Lata Mangeshkar of the South cinema, she had a duet with him in Telugu. So she said I'm very lucky I managed to speak to her, and she's also 92 years old. And she also said that I couldn't imagine Talat singing in such perfect pronunciation in Telugu when he sang with her.
Wow, that makes really like a pan-India singer that could sort
There's
of
an
sing.
incident about songs that he sang in Marathi, and once the Shiv Sena founder Bal Thackeray called him to his house and said, I want to have high tea with you, and Talat Nana was wondering what is it about, So he said that, I've, and by that time he'd only sung about 4 or 5 Marathi songs, and he got one Maharashtra government award for the best Marathi singer of the year as well. So he just had about 5 or 6 Marathi songs that he'd sung, and when Bal Thackeray spoke to him, he said, you sing Marathi so uniquely. I've never heard such feeling when one is singing in Marathi. When you jo ehsaas ki baat hoti hai, I've heard that for the first time. So I think that was quite a revealing statement.
Yeah. Did he also sing in Gujarati? We were
Yes,
discussing
he did.
about that. Okay.
He did.
Was that? Could you talk about it? Because I didn't know about it.
Gujarati songs he sang for the government of India.
Okay.
Very interesting, because there was a land movement happening. This land donation.
Yes.
Jo tha, to convince.
Bhudan, jisko kehte hain.
Yes, Bhudan. So these were Gujarati songs that were sung on the request of the government, and they were about Vinoda Bhave and the land
The
reform movement.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think we should also throw the house for questions, maybe if there are any. But before that, but just to wind things up, you begin, of course, with this idea of a festival to celebrate his legacy,
Yeah.
to bring his songs, to in fact introduce and reintroduce his songs to a generation who perhaps is still listening to, but also those who are not, who have
Yeah.
not, sort of listened to his songs at all. In the book, you bring us back to where you begin. In that sense, so it's
Yes.
coming full circle in that sense.
Yeah.
Your visit to Bombay, meeting him, and then his passing away, and then you carrying his legacy through Jashn Talat.
Right.
And next year, on 24th February,
Yeah.
is marks his
Centenary.
birth centenary.
Yeah,
And if you could give us a sense about what are the things that you are planning for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this book is part of that celebration. It's in the build-up to the centenary.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
December is a festive month where people hopefully buy a lot of books in the festive season to read. And right now it is an e-book. These are just a few author copies. But in the build-up to February, there would be a more workable print version available, and that's the next step of the celebration. Yeah.
Wonderful. All the best, Sahar.
Thank you.
We'll all
Thank
look
you so
forward
much.
to that. And I think Sahar has done a great service to all of us who actually
Wow.
are interested in that phase.
I'm
of
so glad.
Bollywood
This
and
is
Hindi
a
cinema.
very new experience. It's my debut book. I'm usually on the other side asking questions as a journalist. So it's the first time on this side here. But thank you.
No, I think, I got to know so many things, sir. I didn't
Yeah.
know about the Bhutan and stuff. So I
Yeah.
think, I guess
So
the
that's what
only
I
thing
say. It cuts across the history of the country.
was Bhutan, and he was telling me that there's so much more you have to know. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, the only thing now left for you is actually to sing one of his songs.
Okay.
But yeah,
Actually,
no, I have to pick him alive.
No, actually, I was-
what can we believe? So you're
Sahar is, by the way, a singer. She sings really well.
Really? Okay.
And perhaps you could sing that Lucky Charm song of yours, Adil.
That is very difficult. I'm not going to sing.
So a song of your choice.
Which one?
bring him alive. Yes.
Okay.
And what can be better than his granny singing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this is a
So in fact, I
ghazal
was
and
going to
it's a
ask you that.
filmy ghazal. It's from the film Jahan Ara, which he sang in. It had Bharat Bhushan and Mala Sinha. So it's called Phir Wahi Sham. It's a Madan Mohan classic ghazal. So.
Wow.
So I'll sing from the antra because that's how I manage my pitch. And I've always been a very conscious singer because at home there have been such singers, so yeah.
No, please.
जाने अब तुझसे मुलाकात कभी हो के ना हो जो अधूरी रही वो बात कभी हो के ना हो मेरी मंजिल तेरी मंजिल से बिछड़ आई है फिर वही शाम वही गम वही तन्हाई दिल को बहलाने तेरी याद चली आई है फिर वही शाम.
Nice.
Thank
Wow.
you.
That was a wonderful note.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, I guess like now you've done so much of research and you're familiar with the milieu. No, that particular time, and I think
Right.
Bollywood.
What really caught me as a journalistic interest was that his life was going along with the history of the creation of the country. He was a pre-independence radio star, and then he became a post-independence film celebrity, and it continues with the evolution of the country. And then he's establishing the film music. He's a pillar of establishing the film music, the ghazal music industry, and the progress, and getting the Padma Bhushan in the 90s at a time where singers never got the Padma Bhushan. So getting into modern times, adapting to newer music. There's a whole chapter in the book which talks about stereo sound.
Oh, yeah.
And he had this idea of re-recording his old 1950s music in stereo sound technology when it came in the 1980s. So he re-records all his songs because the old LPs that people have don't play anymore. So he re-recorded that in new technology. Wow. So he's like moved ahead and adapted and witnessed the evolution of the country. So yeah, that was very interesting for me as a journalist. Yeah.
एक दुर्मिमल की तरफ से एक आपने एक तलत जी का एक सॉन्ग बोला
जी
तो मैं गाना चाहता हूँ
अच्छा जरूर जरूर जरूर
बिल्कुल
तस्वीर तेरी दिल ना बहला न सकेगी ये तेरी तरह जिसे तू शर्मा न सकेगी मैं बात करूँगा तो ये खामोश रहेगी सीने से लगा लूँगा तुझे कुछ न कहेगी ये तेरी तरह जिसे तू शर्मा न सकेगी तस्वीर तेरी दिल मेरा बहला न सकेगी.
Beautiful. So this ghazal was his first hit in Calcutta, his first recorded hit, yeah, with Pankaj Malik. ये बहुत एक आपने एक अहम गाना गाया है, बहुत pivotal to his career.
This was also the song that you sang in.
I sang in school, yeah.
School, and she won the prize for it.
Yeah, so that was the tasveer charm, the charm of tasveer.
Tasveer. And then there are other couple of songs which has tasveer in it, right?
Yeah,
Tasveer banata hu.
tasveer banata hu. Tasveer nahi banti.
Tasveer nahi banti. How tragic! I mean, you're trying to paint a picture, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think I was looking at some of the videos of yours in which that song has been used. And
With the portrait artist, It's very ironic. The lyrics of the song is तस्वीर बनाता हूँ तस्वीर नहीं बनती तस्वीर नहीं बनती. So that's the struggle of the lover who's trying to paint a portrait of his loved one and can't perfect it, But ironically, it was very funny when I had portrait artists on my platform for Jashn Talat. They would paint these live portraits of his on stage during the concert, and they would want to listen to this song. I said, why do you want to listen to it? It's about that the portrait's never getting complete. But they would love listening to this while painting his tasveer. So yeah.
I always look at it as something as a song of immodesty rather than because it's always about immodesty.
Yeah.
Duniya mujhe dhoonde magar mera nishan koi na ho. I mean, it's a very immodest and arrogance.
Yeah.
I always look at quite the opposite.
Yeah. So I was just saying that we perhaps forgot to touch upon that entire Ghalib phase, that how he became the perfect voice for Ghalib's ghazals, right? That I think is a very interesting thing to.
Yeah. I mean, in the 1950s, the filmmaker said that it's unquestionable to be thinking of anyone else singing Ghalib because Talat Mahmood's perfected poetry in that sense. So yeah.
Well, thank you for reminding me because I think that's the thing. That's one of the aspects.
फिर मुझे तर याद आया दिल जिगर तिश्ने पर याद आया फिर मुझे तर याद आया दम लिया खाना कयामत में दम लिया खाना कयामत में फिर तेरा वक्त सफर या